to the larger plat of this, that was from the city after the Larson property was acquired. The Rushford Village Road was still identified as Rushford Village Road in the 1996 plat. But it had been...
The first 700 feet.
Yeah, and it had been down to the corner, and then from the corner, then it went down to Kenichi's.
And then that got vacated in 2006 when we sold or exchanged property with the gas company. And that's when that, in 2005, that's when the two gentlemen worked on the road to make sure there was access to that driveway for the Kenichi property. And they sort of hand-built, if you will, that roadway, which now serves Kenichi, and it serves as an access point to the gas company, and it serves as a back access to the Dar property.
So let's assume that this road isn't going to change because of what's happened there. What we need is a street of 66 feet that would allow us to still give Kenichi's a street to their property line. That's all we're missing. From the corner of the gas plant.
That's the house all the way down in there?
Over the hill.
And what we're seeing, at least in the record, we believe, Greg, unless we're wrong, is there never was a 66-foot right-of-way along that driveway. There's a road described, as we understand it, at least as I understand it, if you take the property line between Kenichi and Chose, or whoever owns that land to the north, one rod wide on each side. So as we see it, it's a 33-foot road.
On each side of the center line.
33 altogether, 16 and a half, 16 and a half, 33.
So that used to be Rushford Village 32, and if it was my understanding, Mr. Mannion brought it to the council's attention one time during talking of roads, when we were, or a city, our streets are by default 66 feet. And
well, what I'm missing here, was this in the city of Rushford Village and then next?
it was in this, that particular part of that land was, yes.
Okay, well, I mean, at the time you had it, if it was a public.
It was a public street of Rushford Village 32 was before they renamed it to Kenichi.
Mr. Block's describing was a cartway, and that's a typical cartway width.
I don't know if that's what it
That's
said.
the rods, but typically, I mean, your street requirements, you know, your standard measurements are that width. But you gotta go by what's a dedication, you know, what's dedicated, you know, map, that's what they tell you. I don't know if there's ever any measurements that, didn't you show me one time?
I don't have, I guess.
Once if they index it, then it's a public street, but it's just now located in a different jurisdiction. And they take the acts of vacating it, but then they gotta, you know, give the notice to adjoining landowners and, you know, not leave somebody without access. So is it that Kenichi's or not, they don't have access?
Well, they got access. They got access through a 16-foot or one rod access.
But 2 rods, one on each half of the property line.
I think the letter from your engineering firm referenced a 16-foot easement.
It's Otomo that, Otomo engineering.
Otomo did that one? Okay.
It's a 16.5 on our side because we could only pay attention to what we own. But there's also, Blumentritt believes, a 16.5-foot easement like that on the other side of the property line. But what he couldn't ascertain is who actually owns that land. He does not believe it's Chose's. So somebody owns some piece of land between Chose and the middle of that road, and it's not clear who owns it. It could be Kenichi.
Scott, can I see that?
Yeah.
Anyway, like Whitney and I drove up there one day, and we went back and forth, and one night I actually did drive all the way down in there to the house, came all the way back. But the road all the way down to the house isn't any wider than
That's correct.
what you have. Well, why do you need a 66-foot wide street to get all the way to a driveway that is this wide?
Because if you ever wanted to do a development back there and make it a subdivision, you have to have a 66-foot wide road, or you do not have development. And that is the responsibility of the developer to create that. But that's the argument, the fact that if they ever wish to do something, and I don't know if they ever will. I don't even know if it's good to build the land on it. But if it is, they need to have a street of 66 feet.
And I this point, they'd have to prevail on Mr. Gar to either grant them that or sell them, if they wanna put it on that part, or maybe, I don't know what's going
Yeah.
north.
You know, and I don't either, I just know that it was at one time Rushford Village, and then it was Kenichi Road. And had Bob and Jeff never moved that road, it would still be where it is today, and I guess the only question would be as to where's the boundary between, and I don't know what that answer is. I just know that we maintained it for probably the last 40 years.
And I think the question that Mr. Blumentritt found, as we were discussing it, I said, well, I think the village says they plow it. He said, well, then they should be billing the homeowner.
No, it's a street, we only plow it to the lot line.
I'm just
We
telling you.
plow it to the boundaries.
Yeah, and he sees the driveway point of the next being out at that corner where you turn to the gas company, and that the road does, you do not.
The
find
property
any
line,
evidence.
because of legal, you can't landlock, so you would have to bring it to the property line. Since Larson property was between them, that's why it was a Rushford Street until it reached Kenichi's, because Larson's were
And
the
that's
owner
why
of the
they were
land.
guaranteed a 16.5 rod, or 16.5 foot on one side, 16.5 for access to get down to their property. When that road was, when Rush Creek was platted, that was part of our plat responsibility from the city, and we complied with that. And it looks like from, although we haven't hired an attorney to look into it, but it looks like to the north side, they also have that requirement. So the Kenichis have essentially a 33-foot right of passage to get to their property that cannot be taken away. Now, they don't, that's not 66, but it's 33.
I guess, like I said, you know, we're not gonna come to any resolution on any of this tonight. It's rather the fact that, you know, we need to have, you know, a working solution for the Kenichis. You know, if it was a street, you know, and legal would have to make that determination as to what is or is not. It has been my understanding that our streets were, if by default, if nothing else, 66 feet wide. And if that is not the case, I stand to be corrected. Because I don't know.
If Dar were to give them 33 feet, that isn't gonna solve anything, because that road that Jeff cut in there is just a gravel road.
You would have to authorize.
You'd
us
have
to
to make
widen
that a
as-
street.
That's right. I think that's what the mayor is asking the city to consider, making that a street, a designated street in.
Anyway, no solutions, I don't believe this, you know,